You ever meet someone who changes the air in a room? Not with loud words or big gestures, but with something quieter, something that makes your heart stutter when they walk by? That was me, 2 years ago, standing in the kitchen of a cramped apartment in Seattle, watching my roommate, Alex, lean against the counter, laughing at some dumb joke I'd made about burnt toast. His laugh was soft, unguarded, like a secret he didn't mean to let slip, and it hit me like a freight train. I was falling for him. Hard. But here's the problem: we weren't just friends. We were roommates, tied to a 12-month lease, sharing a bathroom, a fridge, and a life that felt like it could crumble with one wrong word. You ever felt a secret so heavy it could ruin your home? That's where this starts. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I'd moved to the city for a fresh start, not to trip into feelings I couldn't afford. Alex was, well, Alex. Messy hair that always looked like he'd just rolled out of bed, late-night coffee runs that ended with him bringing me a cup, the kind of guy who'd leave dishes in the sink but somehow make it charming. We'd been strangers before the lease, matched by a Craigslist ad and a mutual need for cheap rent in a city that bled your wallet dry. Those first few months? They were easy. Movie nights on our sagging couch, debates over whether Thai or pizza was the better takeout, splitting the Wi-Fi bill like responsible adults. Normal. Safe. Until it wasn't. One night, we were washing dishes, elbow to elbow, scrubbing plates from a takeout-fueled movie marathon. His hand brushed mine under the soapy water, and it lingered just a second too long. My pulse spiked, a jolt running through me like I'd touched a live wire. I looked at him, and his eyes were on me, steady, unreadable, with something flickering behind them. Something dangerous. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, like he knew he'd crossed a line. I mumbled something incoherent and fled to my room, heart hammering so loud I thought he'd hear it through the walls. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Did he feel it too? Or was I imagining things, projecting my own mess onto him? That's the thing about forbidden feelings, they make you question everything. You start reading into every glance, every late-night talk, wondering if it's all in your head or if they're hiding the same secret. And when you're stuck under the same roof, there's nowhere to run from it. You're trapped, heart pounding, knowing one confession could unravel your whole world. Have you ever been that close to someone you couldn't touch? That's what this story's about, living with someone you love, and the secret you can't say. Let me take you back to how it started. I was 24, fresh out of a dead-end job at a call center, chasing a new life in Seattle. The city was all rain and overpriced coffee, but it felt like a blank slate, a chance to be someone new. I needed a place to live, fast, because couch surfing at a friend's place was getting old. That's when I found Alex's ad: roommate wanted, 2-bedroom, downtown, $800 per month, no pets, no drama. It was practical, straightforward, exactly what I needed. I wasn't looking for a best friend or a soulmate, just a roof. We met at a coffee shop to talk it over. He was late, showed up in a wrinkled hoodie, coffee in hand, apologizing with this crooked smile that made me forgive him instantly. He was 27, a graphic designer who worked freelance, laid back but sharp, with this quiet intensity that made you want to know him. He asked about my job, my music taste, whether I was a morning person, normal roommate stuff. We clicked. Not in a fireworks way, but in that easy, yeah, I could live with you way. A week later, I moved in with my duffel bag and a box of books, ready to start over. The apartment was small but cozy, exposed brick walls, creaky hardwood floors, a view of the streetlights that glowed orange at night. We set ground rules: split chores, no loud music past midnight, label your leftovers in the fridge. It was practical, transactional, like signing a contract with a stranger you hoped wouldn't turn out to be a creep. But living with someone changes you. You learn their rhythms, how Alex hummed off-key while cooking eggs, how he'd leave sketchbooks open on the couch, doodles of cityscapes and half-finished faces that made me wonder what he was thinking. I'd tease him about his terrible taste in reality TV, and he'd mock my obsession with true crime podcasts, calling me detective with a grin. We were friends, nothing more. At least, that's what I told myself. But little things started creeping in, like cracks in a foundation. Like how he'd make extra coffee in the morning and leave a mug out for me, no questions asked, like it was just what we did. Or how we'd end up talking until 2 a.m. about nothing, our worst fears, our dumbest high school moments, the kind of stuff you don't tell just anyone. I started noticing him more, how his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how his voice softened when he was tired, like he was letting me see a side of him he kept hidden. It wasn't a crush, not at first. It was curiosity. Like I was solving a puzzle I didn't know I'd started. But then came that night with the dishes, that fleeting touch that changed everything. After that, every shared moment felt heavier, like we were balancing on a tightrope. I'd catch myself staring when he wasn't looking, memorizing the way he moved, the way his hands sketched absent-mindedly while he talked. But I couldn't say anything. We had a lease, a life, a friendship. If I was wrong about him, if he didn't feel the same, I'd be the idiot who made our home unlivable. And what if he did feel it? That was worse. Crossing that line meant no going back, no more easy mornings, no more late-night laughs. So I kept quiet, swallowing the secret, pretending everything was fine while my chest ached every time he smiled. I'd lie awake at night, hearing him move in the next room, wondering if he was awake too, thinking about me. It was exhausting, living with someone you wanted so badly but couldn't have. Months passed, and the tension grew like a slow poison, seeping into every corner of our apartment. What used to be a safe space became a minefield. Every interaction was loaded, every glance, every casual touch, every moment we were alone. I'd analyze his words like a detective, searching for clues. Did he sit closer than he used to on the couch? Was he lingering in the living room longer, finding excuses to talk about nothing? Or was I losing it, projecting my own longing onto him? The not knowing was torture, a constant loop in my head that kept me up at night. I'd hear him moving in his room, pacing, maybe, or typing on his laptop, and I'd wonder if he was thinking about me, if he was fighting the same battle I was. One night, it got worse. We were binge-watching some sci-fi show, sprawled on the couch, a blanket tossed over us because the apartment was always freezing. The room was dark except for the TV's glow, and I could feel the heat of his arm next to mine, so close it made my skin hum. He shifted, and his knee brushed my thigh. I froze, every nerve on fire, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He didn't move away. Instead, he turned to me, his face half-lit, shadows dancing across his jaw. "You ever think about how easy it is to miss something right in front of you?" he said, his voice low, deliberate. My heart stopped. Was he talking about us? About this thing we were both pretending didn't exist? Or was it just some random thought, something about the show we were watching? I wanted to ask, to spill everything, to say, "I see you, Alex, and I can't stop seeing you." But fear glued my mouth shut. I laughed it off, said something stupid about the show's plot, and the moment passed like smoke. But it left a mark, a bruise I couldn't stop touching. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to say something, too, that he was as trapped as I was. The next day, he started acting different. Distant. He'd leave the room when I walked in, avoid eye contact like I'd caught him doing something wrong. It was subtle, but I noticed. Was he pulling back because he sensed my feelings? Or because he felt something, too, and was scared of what it meant? I started overthinking everything, every slammed door, every short reply, every time he left the apartment without saying where he was going. One night, I heard him on the phone in his room, voice low, laughing with someone. Jealousy hit me like a punch to the gut. Who was he talking to? Was there someone else? Someone who wasn't stuck in this apartment, someone who could say what I couldn't. I had no right to care, no claim on him, but I did. I cared so much it hurt, a sharp, twisting pain that made it hard to breathe. Then came the night that broke me. It was late, maybe 1 a.m., and I couldn't sleep, my mind stuck on him, on us, on this thing we weren't saying. I went to the kitchen for water and found Alex there, leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. He looked lost, like he was carrying something too heavy to hold. "Can't sleep?" I asked, trying to keep it light, but my voice betrayed me, shaky and raw. He didn't answer right away. Then he looked at me, and his eyes were different, raw, unguarded, like he was letting me see something real. "You ever want something you shouldn't?" he said, voice barely above a whisper. My stomach dropped. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and craving for months. I could have said it then, could have told him everything, could have said, yes, every day, and it's killing me. But I didn't. Fear won, like it always did. I nodded, mumbled something about life being complicated, and went back to my room, hating myself with every step. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words, wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave. The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. Left a note on the counter, work thing, back late. That was it. No explanation, no warmth, just those 4 words in his messy scrawl. I spent the day spiraling, convinced I'd ruined everything by not speaking up. What if he'd been reaching out, and I'd shut him down? What if he was pulling away for good? The apartment felt emptier without him, like the walls were closing in, suffocating me with all the things I hadn't said. I started noticing things: his sketchbook left open on the coffee table, a drawing of 2 figures, blurred, facing each other, their hands almost touching. Was it us? Or was I reading too much into it, desperate for proof he felt the same? Weeks went by, and the distance grew, a chasm I didn't know how to cross. He was still polite, still Alex, but the warmth was gone. No more late-night talks, no more shared coffee mugs. I missed him, even though he was right there, just a room away. The lease was up in 3 months, and I started dreading the day we'd have to decide, renew or walk away. I couldn't imagine staying, not like this, not with this secret eating me alive. But leaving felt like giving up on something I'd never even tried to have. I was stuck, loving someone I lived with, and it was tearing me apart. Then, something shifted. It was a rainy Sunday, the kind where the world feels soft and heavy, like it's holding its breath. Alex came home soaked, hair plastered to his face, carrying a bag of takeout from our favorite Thai place. "Truce," he said, holding up the bag like a peace offering, his smile hesitant but real. I laughed, and for the first time in weeks, it felt like us again, like the early days when things were easy. We ate on the floor, cross-legged, passing containers of pad thai and curry back and forth, the rain tapping against the windows. He told me about a client who'd driven him nuts, demanding a logo redesign for the 3rd time, and I told him about a coworker who'd spilled coffee on my laptop, ruining a week's worth of work. It was normal, easy, but underneath it, the tension was still there, humming like a live wire. I could feel it in the way his eyes lingered on me when he thought I wasn't looking, in the way his laugh caught when I leaned too close. That night, he didn't go to his room right away. We stayed up, talking about nothing and everything: music we loved, dreams we'd had as kids, the way the city looked at dusk when the lights started to glow. At one point, he leaned back on the couch, close enough that I could smell his shampoo, something clean and faintly cedar. "You're easy to talk to," he said, and his voice was so soft it made my chest ache, like he was saying something bigger than the words. I wanted to tell him then, to say, "I'm falling for you, Alex, and it's killing me to keep it inside." But I didn't. Instead, I asked, "You ever feel like you're stuck, like you can't say what you really want?" My voice was barely steady, and I regretted it the second it left my mouth. He looked at me, and for a second, I thought he'd say it, whatever it was we were both dancing around, this thing we were too scared to name. But he just smiled, a sad, fleeting thing, and said, "All the time," before changing the subject to some band he'd seen live. I nodded, pretending it didn't hurt, but it did. It hurt like hell. After that, the push and pull got worse. Some days, he'd be warm, open, like the Alex I'd fallen for, leaving me coffee or teasing me about my terrible cooking. Other days, he'd shut down, barely speaking, his eyes avoiding mine like I was a stranger. I started noticing patterns: how he'd linger when we were alone, how his eyes would catch mine and hold just a beat too long, like he was searching for something. But every time I thought we were close to something, he'd pull back, leaving me grasping at air. It was maddening, like chasing a shadow. I started keeping a mental list of moments, like evidence in a case I was building against myself: the time he fixed my scarf when it was slipping, his fingers brushing my neck for just a moment; the time he left a post-it on my door that said, "You're out of coffee, loser," fixed it, with a little doodle of a mug. Small things, but they felt huge, like they were all I had to hold on to. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. We were cleaning up after dinner, a quiet meal where neither of us said much. He was quieter than usual, moving like he was carrying a weight. I couldn't stand the silence. "You okay?" "You've been off," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. He froze, sponge in hand, and looked at me like I'd caught him stealing. "Just tired," he said, but it was a lie. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes flicked away. I pushed, just a little, desperate for something real. "If something's wrong, you can tell me. We live together, Alex. We're supposed to be honest." He laughed, but it was sharp, bitter, like I'd said something cruel. "Honest? That's rich," he said, and my heart sank. What did that mean? Was he calling me out? Did he know? Before I could ask, he tossed the sponge in the sink and walked out, the door to his room clicking shut behind him. I stood there, stomach in knots, wondering what I'd done wrong. The next day, I found a letter on the counter. Not a note, a full letter, in his messy handwriting, folded like he'd debated leaving it at all. My hand shook as I opened it. It wasn't long, but every word burned into me. "I don't know how to say this," it started. "Living with you has been the best and worst thing. I see you every day, and it's not enough. I want more, but I can't. I'm sorry." That was it. No explanation, no next steps, just those words, raw and jagged. I read it 10 times, 20, trying to make sense of it. He felt it too. He'd been hiding it, just like me, carrying the same secret, the same ache. But why can't? What was stopping him? Was it the lease? The fear of ruining what we had? Or something else, something he hadn't told me? I waited for him to come home, heart pounding, ready to finally say it all, to lay it bare and deal with whatever came next. But when he walked in, he wouldn't look at me. "Forget the letter," he said, voice flat, like he was talking about the weather. I was drunk. Didn't mean it. I didn't believe him, his eyes were too heavy, his voice too strained, but the dismissal stung worse than the silence. It was like he'd taken the air out of the room, left me gasping. I wanted to push, to demand answers, but I didn't. I just nodded, said, "Okay," and went to my room, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. The lease was up in a month now. Every day felt like a countdown, a ticking clock I couldn't stop. I started looking at new apartments, telling myself it was for the best, that I needed to get out before I lost myself completely. But every time I thought about leaving, I'd see him laughing at some dumb joke, sketching in his notebook, just existing, and I'd lose my nerve. I was stuck, loving someone I lived with, knowing he felt something too but wouldn't admit it. The secret wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours, and it was tearing us apart. I started noticing more signs, or maybe I was just desperate. His sketchbook was always open now, filled with drawings that felt too personal, two figures, always blurred, always facing each other, never quite touching. I found a playlist on his laptop, left open by accident, full of songs about longing, about things unsaid. Was he trying to tell me something? Or was I seeing what I wanted to see? I started leaving signs of my own, testing him, lingering longer when we talked, brushing his arm when I passed him in the hall, watching for his reaction. Sometimes, he'd lean into it, his eyes softening. Other times, he'd pull away, like he was scared of getting too close. It was a dance, and we were both terrible at it. One night, we got into a fight, not a real fight, but the kind where the air gets heavy and every word feels like a landmine. I'd left dishes in the sink, and he snapped, saying I never cleaned up. It was petty, but it wasn't about the dishes. "You can't just ignore things and hope they go away," he said, and I knew he wasn't talking about chores. I wanted to scream, then say it. "Say what you mean." But I didn't. I just apologized, cleaned the dishes, and went to bed, my heart pounding with all the things I couldn't say. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last. I started packing, slowly, telling myself it was practical, that I needed to be ready when the lease ended. But every box I taped shut felt like a betrayal, like I was giving up on something I'd never even fought for. Alex noticed, I could tell. He'd glance at the boxes, his jaw tight, but he never said anything. Neither did I. We were both cowards, hiding behind silence, letting the clock run out. The lease ended on a Tuesday. We stood in the empty apartment, boxes packed, keys on the counter, the air thick with everything we hadn't said. The place looked smaller without our stuff, like it was already forgetting us. I wanted to scream those 3 words, to grab him and make him admit he'd meant that letter, that he still meant it. But I didn't. Fear had won, again. Instead, I said, "Good luck, Alex. Stay in touch." My voice cracked, but I held it together. He nodded, eyes on the floor, like he couldn't bear to look at me. "You too," he said, and that was it. No big fight, no tearful confession, just 2 people walking away from something they'd never named. We left the keys, closed the door, and went our separate ways, carrying a secret we'd never say. A month later, I was in a new apartment, alone, trying to start over. The city felt different now, colder, like it knew what I'd lost. I was unpacking when my phone buzzed, a text from Alex. It was a photo of one of his sketches, the same one I'd seen months ago, 2 figures, blurred, facing each other, hands almost touching. Under it, he'd written, "I should have said it." My heart stopped. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. I typed a reply, "Me too," then deleted it. Typed it again, deleted it again. What was the point? Saying it now wouldn't fix anything. It would just hurt more, reopen a wound that was barely starting to heal. Some secrets stay buried, not because you want them to, but because saying them now would break you. I still think about him every time it rains, every time I make coffee and there's no second mug on the counter. I wonder if he thinks about me, if he sees me in every sketch, every song, every quiet moment. I'll never know. And maybe that's the worst part. Have you ever fallen for someone you lived with? Someone you saw every day but couldn't touch? Someone whose every word, every glance, felt like a promise and a warning? Drop your story in the comments, I read every one. And if this hit you, share it with someone who gets it. Maybe they've got a secret, too. Maybe they're still carrying it, like I am.